The day was perfect. The sun shone brightly, and the small church was decorated with white and gold flowers. Guests arrived in their best clothes, excited to witness the union of Emeka and Ada. Everyone admired Emeka, a man who had worked hard to build a life for himself and Ada. He stood tall at the altar, dressed in a white luxury suit, looking calm and composed. But deep inside, his heart was boiling. Ada entered the church, her white gown flowing gracefully as she walked down the aisle with her father. Her smile lit up the room, and her beauty captured everyone's attention. But Emeka didn't see the woman he once loved. All he saw was a liar, a betrayal who had used him for everything he had. Years ago, Emeka met Ada in the village. She was a young girl from a poor family, struggling to make ends meet. Her parents were farmers, and life was hard. Emeka, who had just started his business in town, noticed her one day at the market, carrying a heavy basket of goods. He was drawn to her beauty and innocence. He introduced himself and offered to help her with her load. That simple act marked the beginning of their relationship. Ada had dreams of going to school and becoming successful, but her family couldn't afford it. Emeka, who had fallen deeply in love with her, promised to change her life. He took it upon himself to sponsor her education. From secondary school to university, he paid her fees, bought her books, and gave her everything she needed. While Ada was in school, Emeka worked tirelessly to support her. He expanded his business, often sacrificing his own comfort to ensure she had the best. He lived a modest life, sending most of his earnings to Ada and her family. When Ada's father fell ill, Emeka paid the hospital bills. When her younger siblings needed school fees, Emeka provided. He became the backbone of her family, the man they all relied on. But while Emeka was building a future for Ada, she was building something else, lies. She accepted his help, showering him with words of gratitude, but her heart wasn't in it. To her, Emeka was nothing more than a means to an end. She wanted success, comfort, and wealth, and Emeka was her ticket to it. Deep down, she didn't love him. She pretended to care, knowing it would keep him giving. Years passed, and Emeka proposed to Ada. She agreed, not because she loved him, but because she knew how much she depended on his money. To her, marrying him was just another step towards securing her future. The truth came out accidentally. Weeks before the wedding, Emeka decided to surprise Ada at her house. He wanted to talk about the honeymoon plans and bring her some gifts. When he arrived, he heard voices inside. He recognized Ada's voice, soft and sweet, and then he heard Chike, his best friend. "Do you really want to go through with this wedding?" Chike asked. Ada sighed. "Do I have a choice? Emeka is my sponsor. Without him, I'm nothing. I need his money." "But you don't love him," Chike said. "You love me, I know," Ada replied. "But we have to be careful. Let me marry him first. After that, we can figure something out." Emeka stood frozen outside the door, his heart breaking into pieces. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Ada, the woman he had sacrificed so much for, was using him. And Chike, the friend he trusted the most, was part of her betrayal. He didn't confront them. Instead, he left quietly and went back to his house. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat in the dark, thinking about all the years he had wasted, all the sacrifices he had made for Ada. He thought about the lies, the betrayal, and the fact that the two people he trusted the most had been deceiving him. His pain turned into anger, and his anger turned into a cold resolve. On the wedding day, Emeka stood at the altar, watching Ada walk toward him. Her smile looked fake to him now, and every step she took felt like an insult. He glanced at Chike, who stood beside him as the best man. Chike's hands were shaking, and he avoided Emeka's gaze. The priest began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. Emeka's mind rest. His heart pounded in his chest, but his face remained calm. When the priest asked if anyone objected to the marriage, Emeka stepped forward. I have something to say, he said, his voice steady. The guests gasped, and Ada looked at him in confusion. Emeka, what are you doing? She whispered. Without answering, Emeka reached into his agbada and pulled out a gun. The room erupted in chaos. Guests screamed, some running for the exit, others too shocked to move. Ada froze, her eyes wide with fear. Emeka, please, don't do this, she begged, tears streaming down her face. Emeka's hand didn't waver. I gave you everything, Ada. I sacrificed my life for you. And this is how you repay me? By betraying me with my best friend. Chike stepped forward. Emeka, stop this. Let's talk about it. Emeka laughed bitterly. Talk. You've already said enough, Chike. You've said it all behind my back. Before anyone could stop him, Emeka fired. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the church, and Ada fell to the ground. Her white dress turned red as blood spread across it. Chike lunged at Emeka, trying to grab the gun, but Emeka was faster. He turned and shot Chike too, ending the lives of the two people who had destroyed his. The church was silent, except for the sound of sobbing and whispers. Emeka stood there, the gun still in his hand. He looked at the two bodies on the floor, his face expressionless. The pain in his heart was gone, replaced by a strange emptiness. The police arrived moments later, guns drawn. Drop your weapon, one of them shouted. Emeka didn't resist. He dropped the gun and raised his hands. As they handcuffed him and led him outside, he felt a strange sense of peace. He had lost everything, but at least now, they couldn't hurt him anymore. After Emeka's arrest, the police van sped through the streets, its sirens slicing through the air. Emeka sat silently in the back, his hands cuffed but his heart calm, almost unevenly so. The officers exchanged glances, confused by his lack of resistance or remorse. He stared out the window, the chaotic scenes of his wedding day flashing in his mind like an unwanted movie reel. As the van pulled up to the station, a small crowd had already gathered, eager to catch a glimpse of the man whose actions had turned a day of joy into one of horror. Back at the church, the congregation erupted into chaos. The guests, who had once been excitedly discussing the bride and groom's future, now whispered in hushed tones about the tragedy they had just witnessed. Eda's parents, inconsolable, clung to each other, their cries filling the silent space. Some attendees condemned Emeka's actions outright, calling him a murderer, while others expressed quiet understanding, whispering that betrayal of that magnitude could drive anyone to madness. The priest, pale and trembling, stood frozen at the altar, his hands clutching his Bible as though it could reverse the events that had just unfolded. When Eda's family returned home to their modest hut, the weight of the day crushed them. Eda's father, still recovering from his long illness, slumped into a wooden chair, his face a mask of grief. Her mother wept uncontrollably, clutching Eda's younger siblings, who were too young to fully grasp what had happened. They had not only lost a daughter but also the stability Emeka's financial support had brought. The community, once sympathetic to their plight, now distanced themselves, treating the family as a reminder of the scandal. As the days turned into weeks, Emeka's once thriving supermarket fell into decline. News of his actions spread like wildfire, and customers avoided the store, unwilling to associate with a man who had taken 2 lives in cold blood. His employees, one by one, resigned, unwilling to work in a place tainted by scandal. Within months, the supermarket, which had been a symbol of Emeka's hard work and success, closed its doors, leaving an empty building as a silent testament to what he had lost. Inside the prison, Emeka's life was a far cry from the one he had known. The confident businessman who once commanded respect now shuffled through cold, sterile corridors in a tattered uniform. At first, he remained detached, his mind replaying the events of the wedding over and over. Other inmates watched him curiously, intrigued by his stoicism and the rumors of what had brought him there. Emeka, however, spoke to no one, retreating further into his own thoughts. But prison has a way of breaking even the strongest spirits. As days turned into months, Emeka began to feel the weight of his solitude. The faces of Ada and Chike haunted his dreams, their voices echoing in the silence of his cell. At first, he tried to justify his actions, clinging to the betrayal that had driven him to pull the trigger. But as time went on, doubt crept in. Could he have walked away and rebuilt his life instead of letting anger consume him? He started to question whether the revenge he had sought was worth the price he now paid. Outside the prison walls, opinions about the tragedy began to shift. Some in the village argued that Emeka had been driven to madness by the depth of betrayal he experienced. Others remained firm in their condemnation, insisting that nothing could justify taking 2 lives. Eda's family, still grieving, avoided public gatherings, unable to bear the weight of judgmental stirs. Her siblings, desperate to escape the shadow of the tragedy, sought work in nearby towns, leaving their parents alone to grapple with their loss. Inside the prison, Emeka met a visiting pastor who seemed unshaken by his cold demeanor. Week after week, the pastor returned, offering words of counsel that chipped away at Emeka's emotional armor. Slowly, Emeka began to open up, speaking of the sacrifices he had made for Ada, the betrayal he had endured, and the anger that had consumed him. The pastor listened patiently, eventually offering a simple yet profound statement: "Forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you." Those words stayed with Emeka, prompting him to reflect on his actions more deeply. He began writing letters, long, heartfelt apologies addressed to Eda's family, his former employees, and even the congregation that had witnessed his crime. Though he doubted they would forgive him, the act of writing became a form of release, allowing him to confront the pain he had buried beneath his anger. The village, though scarred, began to heal in its own way. Eda's siblings, having built new lives in the city, became advocates for emotional resilience, speaking to young people about the dangers of suppressing pain and the importance of seeking help. They refused to let their sister's story define them, instead using it as a cautionary tale to inspire others. Meanwhile, Eda's parents, though still grieving, found some solace in the letters Emeka had written. While forgiveness was far from their hearts, they appreciated his acknowledgement of their pain. 10 years after the fateful day, Emeka stepped out of the prison gates, a free man. The world outside was unrecognizable, but he carried with him the lessons of his time behind bars. He returned to the village, not as the successful businessman he once was, but as a man humbled by his mistakes. Some villagers avoided him, unwilling to engage with the man who had caused so much pain. Others, seeing the quiet humility in his demeanor, offered him cautious kindness. Emeka found solace in helping others, using the skills he had honed as a businessman to mentor young people and support struggling families. Though the shadows of his past never fully left him, he embraced his new purpose, determined to make amends in whatever way he could. His story became a powerful reminder of the devastating consequences of betrayal and revenge, and the long, painful road to redemption.